anyone else is going to join. But hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Navigating the Holidays. Our team today is going to be sharing some practical tips for supporting your kiddos during the holiday season. We know it gets stressful and busy, so we just hope to provide some tips for you guys. Okay, I think we'll just go ahead and get started. So first off, I just want to talk a little bit about our services here at North Shore Pediatric Therapy. So the services that we do provide are applied behavioral analysis, or ABA, speech and feeding therapy, occupational therapy, mental health services, physical therapy, and then lastly, neuropsychology, which includes our early autism testing clinic. We do have 12 locations throughout the Chicagoland area, including our brand new location that's going to be opening soon in Woodridge. If you want to learn more information or to contact us about any questions or to start services at North Shore Pediatric Therapy for your kiddo, our phone number is listed as well as our email to contact us. You can also find more information or submit a contact or a request form on our website at nsptforkids.com. So I'll go ahead and introduce our presenters today. First, we have Debbie McGee, who is our Assistant Clinical Director of Speech and Mental Health here at NSPT. Next is Sierra Jones, our Assistant Clinical Director of Occupational Therapy and Physical Therapy. Next, we have Dana Ignarski, who is one of our BCBAs at our Lake Bluff Clinic. And then lastly, we have Cindy Beliveau, who unfortunately could not make it today. So she did provide all of her information on her slides that we'll be presenting for her. But she is a licensed clinical social worker at our Des Plaines clinic. And we'll provide her contact information at the end as well if you have any follow-up questions regarding her information. So today's agenda, our topics are going to be talking about holiday expectations, preparation for holiday gatherings, and sensory accommodations. And the disciplines that we'll be presenting on that will be from ABA as well as occupational therapy. Next, we'll be discussing feeding and holiday mealtime strategies presented from our speech and feeding therapist as well as occupational therapy. And then it will go into managing anxiety and stress for both kiddos as well as parents from the perspective of mental health. And then lastly, we'll do a summary of all of the disciplines and all of the tips that we've provided today. And then at the end, we'll have a question and answer session. So please feel free during the presentation to type everything out in the chat. If you have questions as we go through, that's what we'll be using at the end to answer any questions, is using the chat feature on Zoom. But besides that, we'll just go ahead and get started. And first off, we're talking about those holiday expectations, preparation, and sensory accommodations. And to kick it off, I will be passing it off to Dana.
Hi, everyone. So in this slide, I'm going to talk a little bit more about defining clear expectations and how it can help make things easier this holiday season. So using clear expectations is a great tool to proactively prevent undesired behavior, and I'll discuss that a little bit more detail. So my first bullet point, foreshadow any changes of routine ahead of time. So there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. It also gives your child a heads up of what's to come. I am speaking for myself, but I know I truly enjoy knowing what comes next in my day and love having a calendar and an outline for my day. So you can do this in a lot of different ways. So listed over here on the side is a first then visual. That's one way that you can define expectations very clearly. So first then, I use it a lot. It's one of my favorite tools. So an example would be first, clean up your toys, then you can have tablet time. So your child would engage in a less preferred activity contingent on gaining access to something preferred or motivating, right? So the key to using a first then is having that motivator. And I like to tell families too, the first then without that motivator will not work. It's okay to take some time and wait for that right moment, especially if you have the luxury to do so. So if you're placing a demand and you know, okay, I know I have to pick my battle and follow through with this demand, it's okay to wait until your child is really actively seeking something. Okay, first this, then right, you can leverage that motivator in context. So just be patient with using it. First, then you can use it with schedule icons, which is really nice with Velcro. You can also draw a quick picture. You can write a couple keywords. As long as you're narrating the first and the then, it's a great tool. And I like to say a picture is worth 1,000 words, and it really is true. It rings true with a lot, especially within the ASD population. Next is timers. I also listed a visual timer there. I really enjoy using a countdown timer. It provides a nice visual representation of how much time is elapsing and how much time remains. Using timers, one of my favorite tools, only because it takes the ownership off the person giving the demand or signifying the transition, right? So, okay, the timer went off. The timer's showing that you're done with this. It's time to do this, right? Is it kind of neutralizes that demand in that way. You can also use timers to signify how long you want your child to engage in a behavior too, making it very clear and finite, like, okay, let's sit. I'm going to set a 5-minute timer. I expect you to do X, Y, and Z. So that way they know the timer's done, I'm done, right? So timer is another really great tool. Sierra will go into more detail about social stories and also written schedules to outline clear expectations. The next point, make any response expectations known to your child. A lot of times with expectations, a lot of them they tend to be implied, right? They're implicit, they're not explicitly stated. So if you are at a family gathering, for example, and everyone and the demand is stated, come on, everybody, let's go open gifts. What does that mean, right? What does that mean to your child? How are you going to define that clearly of what is expected of them? So that lends me to my next point, break down the response requirement into smaller, more achievable parts. So if the demand was placed like, let's all go in and open gifts, so you can clearly state the demand, like, okay, let's sit for X amount of minutes to watch open gifts, or pick this many gifts to open and then you can be done. And it's okay. I mean, in that situation, you can just state to the person that you are, or some family members or the person hosting, and be like, do you mind if my child opens first, or they might not attend for very long. I'm just going to have them sit for the first 5 minutes if that's cool. Can they start opening gifts? And I'm sure there won't be objections with that. And it's okay to ask for those modifications for your child. Number 4, choose when to pick your battles and then when to follow through with demands. I know in the holiday season, there's a lot of changes of routine. So you're going to want to avoid just placing unnecessary demands, just to make your life easier and your child's life easier too, especially in a novel environment with people you don't regularly see. There's more people, there's a lot more going on. So choose when to pick your battles and follow through with your demands. So I like to say you can either ask or tell. So if you're going to tell to do a demand, obviously follow through, but then use the first then, right? Have that motivator so your child's motivated to complete it, then everything will go really smooth. Also, you can always ask. You can say, would you be willing to help with this? Or offer choices. Offer choices when possible, always. It's also another proactive way that you can prevent behavior. So would you help me set the table, or would you help me pick up these toys? So then your child has a choice. I know choices, it's a really nice way to promote autonomy, helps your child feel more comfortable, also prevents other potential behavioral outbursts as well. I know I like to have a choice, especially if I'm in an unfamiliar situation. It makes me feel like I'm in control. The last point that I wanted to make in this slide is define a calm down space for your child. Know what signals warrant prompting and self-regulation so that you have a plan to avoid any kind of escalation. So if there is a plan to prompt, it's more likely that you will execute the prompting. It's great to have a plan. So I think just going into the holiday season, knowing that you have a plan is going to serve you well, and define that space ahead of time. I know Sierra will talk about this more in the later slides, but just make sure that you have that defined. Okay. So moving on to my next slide, prompting and reinforcement. So the holidays are a great time to practice generalizing the skills that your child has been working on in treatment. Let them surprise you. That's to my next point. Keep your child's favorite reinforcer on hand. I'm sure many of you know what your child's motivated by, and keep that available for them. Let them surprise you. Catch them being good with reinforcement and praise. Even especially in novel situations, you're outside of the routine, it's a really good idea to front load or make the reinforcement schedule a little bit heavier, and you're reinforcing those appropriate behaviors on a more dense schedule. That way it'll prevent the undesired behaviors because they're getting praise and they're getting the good things for the good behaviors, right? I would anticipate and reinforce those unexpected desired responses as well. Reinforcement works because it increases the likelihood that a behavior will occur again in the future. So if your child engages in a desired behavior and it's amazing, they greeted somebody and they waved, made eye contact, that's amazing. So you provide reinforcement. So it's really awesome to work on these skills. And if you need, reach out to your BCBA. If you just need a couple skills that you would love to work on generalizing, get in contact with them. We'll help you brainstorm a couple of the top 2 or 3, just to have and reinforce, because in ABA, one of the more challenging things is taking the skill that we practice and repeatedly over and over in certain environments to generalize that across people, across settings, right? Using different items, all that work is so helpful. So the more that we can generalize, the better, and the more likelihood that your child will use that skill in the future. So another fun tip, have your family and friends join in on the fun. So talk to your family and friends about reinforcing behaviors that your child's been working on. So like I said before, greetings, maybe identifying family members, that's a pretty fun one. Just carve out time and space to celebrate with your child and have that reinforcement ready and available, especially if your child's reinforced by social praise. Leverage your audience. You have a group of people, you guys can cheer, hooray, it makes for a great time. And then last but not least, prompt and reinforce replacement behaviors in a timely manner to avoid escalation. So I always prompt sooner rather than later, right? You're going to want to always prompt at first signals that you are identifying, okay, something's not quite right. My child is starting to escalate, or I'm starting to see signs that I know that they're not comfortable, right? So it's better to intervene here than wait until they fully escalate, because once you're at this curve at the top, you end up just having to wait anyway, and you can't really intervene until they start to de-escalate here. So I would prompt and reinforce those replacement behaviors sooner rather than later. So what is a replacement behavior? 99% of the time, you can always go to communication. So if your child is overwhelmed and has too much sensory input, you can prompt them to say break and then prompt the break. Or if they're really persistently seeking access to a toy, instead of behavior getting their needs met, you can have them request toy or my turn, right? Other replacement behaviors that I tend to use are some coping strategies, which we'll go into in more detail later. And more of that, the self-regulation piece. And I know that we'll talk about that again. Yeah. Honor your child's assent as well. So just be mindful, be in tune with what they're seeking more of and what they're avoiding, and help be their advocate is my last tip. So we're going to take it away and talk about sensory accommodations next.
Oh, like Dana was saying, offer a quiet space to get away. Wherever you are, try and find a place that they can go to. Lots of us get very overwhelmed by the sensory overload of the holidays. It's super important to help your child find a place where they feel like they can get away from everything, and get away from all that input and be able to regulate a little bit. Have things ready and available that your child finds comforting. That could be headphones to help quiet the noise, a room with some soft lights. Maybe if you don't really exactly know where you're going, you can bring your own little lamps. They have all those cute little animal ones that provide like a soft light and bring that with. Um, Maybe bringing a weighted blanket, their favorite stuffed animal, or their favorite book, anything that you know your child likes to use to help them calm down, have those things available for them in these calm down spots. If you're visiting a family member's house for the holidays, ask them ahead of time if there's a space that you could use and let them know that honestly that space could be helpful for not only your child, but all the other children and maybe even the adults as well to have a space that they can all go away to and be able to regulate and calm down a little bit. Maybe even you can have your child help you find a spot. Get that buy-in from them. Have them go on an adventure at this person's house and find the perfect spot that they think is going to be really good to have a calm down area. Another really good tip is get in some movement. All the sensory input from the holidays can be super, super overwhelming, and movement is a great way to regulate all that input coming in and kind of get that stuff out, get the wiggles out, all of those kind of things. You can get your child, the other kids of the family, maybe even the adults involved in something that's kind of a structured movement. This could be playing The Floor is Lava. You could have the kids do a dance off together. You could turn YouTube on the TV and bring on a movement song, maybe one of your kids' favorite movement songs. Bring that out, show the family. Play charades. Build an obstacle course with the furniture. Something that's going to allow them to get in some movement, but obviously is being done in a really fun way that your kid's going to want to engage in, but lets them kind of blow off that steam and regulate their body. And then they can go back to their playing whatever they were doing. Another one is give them a job. This can help your child feel a really big sense of belonging in the chaos of the holidays. Heavy work is a really great sensory regulating activity. Have them carry the presents in. Maybe not the breakable ones, but they can carry some of the heavier presents in, maybe. Have them help carry in some of the food. Wherever you are, if they're allowed to, have them help rearrange the furniture to make room for all of the guests coming. Something that kind of gives their body some big, heavy input that they have to push or pull something. That can be a really great way. And doing that in the form of a job makes your kid feel special, like they're helping with the holidays. Preparation is super, super important, like Dana was mentioning earlier. One way to promote success in a novel routine is to prepare. We can't always prepare for everything, but in those instances where we can, or we can prepare a little bit, it really can help make or break it. Have your kid read books about the holidays so your child can get an idea of what the change in routine is going to potentially look like. You can read a social story about a specific scenario. The picture down at the bottom, with a bunch of little kind of like Pixar looking faces is from a website called Nookly. It's a really great website that uses AI to help create personalized learning tools. So you can customize your own social story about any topic. You can make visual schedules with it. You can learn about emotions through those things. I think they have free trials, so you can go kind of look at it and see, but you can make your own little social story or own little book for your kid to read about to prepare them for the holidays. Um, Another thing is to use visual aids. Um, so I have a picture here of like the morning routine, right? It's got pictures of what you're going to be going through for the day. Um, and you can kind of flip that little check over, and that helps let them know when they're done with that activity. Especially if your kid isn't to a reading level yet. This kind of gives them those pictures, lets them know what the expectation is, and they know how many things are left and how many things they've done. Like Dana had mentioned earlier, the first then board. Also, educating your family is super important, right? So Let your family know what you've been working on lately in therapy or at home. Let them know about the boundaries and rules that you have in place for them right now. Carryover is super important, especially when we're going into a time that is a change in routine, right? So, letting your family know, like, hey, so and so has been working on these things. This is how we're reinforcing this stuff. Here's a visual schedule that we're using. Can I just put it up somewhere in the house so that my kid can see it and go through their steps for the day? That'll be really important and really help make sure that that carryover and that change in routine can go more smoothly. To go along with that, like quiet space, bring fidgets or those other calming things, right? Make a little bag. Have your kid be involved in preparing the bag. Have them help go around the house and pick some things that they want to bring with. It really helps with that buy-in that they might want to use it then when they're at this place, but bring those things with. And importantly, offer breaks. The holidays are a really busy time for everyone. And although the holidays are incredibly fun, sometimes we still need to take breaks from that fun. It can be really hard for kids to understand their regulation level and when they might need a break. So offer breaks periodically for them. Make the breaks fun so they don't feel like maybe they're missing out on something. So again, make them feel special, ask them to do a job, maybe go play that structured game during that time. But make sure that you're offering those breaks so that your kid has the opportunity to get that regulation in before they, get too dysregulated.
Next, we're going to go on to feeding and holiday mealtime strategies. And for this to kick it off, we're going to pass it over to Debbie.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming today. So we know that food is the love language for many families. People show that they care about you and your child by making these elaborate meals. And whether you have a picky eater or maybe a child that's been diagnosed with a pediatric feeding disorder, the holidays can come with a lot of stress for you and for your child. A holiday meal for your child is a combination of unfamiliar foods in an unfamiliar environment, and it's paired with this pressure to eat. And for you as the parent, the holiday meal, you fear that your child won't eat, and you're facing comments and judgment from well-meaning family members, and it can just cause a lot of stress. So here are some strategies that you can try to help to prevent some of that. The first one is to talk about the foods ahead of time. Maybe you need to go ahead and call the host of the party and find out what are they going to be serving. And then you can go home and talk to your child about what they're going to be seeing on the plates that day. Feel free to make new foods with your child at home before they have a holiday meal. We know that kids feel positive when they can help prep a meal. So if you want to prepare some of those foods that your child is going to see ahead of time, take your child shopping, have them help you prep it, have them help you cook it, and then they'll see that food for another time before they get to the party. Bring a dish that you know your child is going to like and eat. This will guarantee that they can sit at the table and there's something there for the child to eat. Maybe you want to have your child eat a pre-dinner. I would bring some snacks for later on in case they get hungry, but this way you don't have to worry about them not eating anything for the entire time that you're at the party. Make sure you incorporate some safe foods, and safe foods are foods that you absolutely know your child is going to eat. And for that one day, it's okay if that safe food is a chocolate chip cookie. If that means that your child has something there to eat and be a part of the group, it's okay for the one day to go ahead and incorporate that safe food. Consider using dips, and you can go either way with dips. Some of our kids love barbecue sauce. They love ranch dressing. And the thought of putting that on our turkey is way too much for us. But if that's going to have your child go ahead and eat that turkey or that side dish, go ahead and let them use those dips. Another thing too is that maybe there's a new dip on the table and your child's not too sure of it. Go ahead and give them a cracker and let them take just the tiniest bite. The cracker is the safe food. Maybe it'll help them explore some new foods at that time. Let your child take ownership of what they want on their plate. There's nothing worse than, everyone's scooping these big piles of food onto a plate. That's just way too much for your little one. So go ahead and you might have to help them carry the plate. Let them take the scoop and put on their plate as much as they want. You want to avoid any have tos, any pressure. You don't want to say you have to have a bite before you can open up your presents. You have to have a bite of green beans before your chocolate chip cookies. It just sets the child up to not be successful with the meal. You want to stop any comparisons. Your child isn't going to care that their cousin Susie ate the green beans. They're going to be like, good for Susie, but I'm still not eating the green beans. Comparisons just don't often work for our kiddos. Um, Go ahead and bring a plate and utensils that your child is familiar with. We really want to have realistic expectations for our kiddos. We know that safety is found in the familiarity. So, new places, new people, new activities, and new foods can cause a little bit of stress for your kiddo. So, the more we keep it the same, the more we keep it familiar, the better it's going to be for your little one. And then I think just something to remember, it's okay. Remember, the holidays are one day and it's about family. It's okay for your kiddo to skip a meal. It's okay for your child to only eat what they want on that day. You can fix it the next day. It's okay if your child only has a bread roll. It's okay if your child only has chocolate cookies, chocolate chip cookies on that day. It's one day. And I feel like this quote kind of summarizes it. Enjoy the food yourself, enjoy the family and the friends, and give your child the autonomy to choose what they want to eat. I promise everyone will have a more pleasant experience. The more we push our kiddos to eat something they don't want to or engage in experience they don't want to, the more it's going to backfire, and the child is just not going to really have a good experience.
So, like Debbie said, there is comfort in the familiar, right? And the holidays are oftentimes a place where we bring out dishes that we might only eat that dish once a year because it's a traditional dish. So, there's a lot of unfamiliar foods in this area. So, one really good tip is to use a learning plate. This can help your kid just explore new things with no expectations. A learning plate usually just kind of looks like an extra plate that's placed on the table, a little bit farther away, maybe closer to the parent or to somebody else, that you just put a couple pieces of different foods on there and you just use it to learn about those things. So you can talk about how the food was made. You can talk about where the food grows, how it grows, different ways that people prepare that food. You can talk about the sensory aspects of it. What does it feel like? Is it bumpy? Is it smooth? What does it smell like? Is it soft? Is it crunchy? And you can model exploring those foods. You can touch them first. You can give them a little sniff. You can give it a little kiss, things like that. And just model that for your kids so that they can learn about foods in a no expectation way. Another great thing is to play with your food. I know a lot of people aren't super fond of that one, but one of our main occupations of a child is play. And that's how they learn the most, right? So exposing them to new foods through play is a great way to just get some extra engagement with it. On average, it takes about 12 exposures to a new food before a child is willing to eat it. So make those exposures fun, right? Build a snowman with the mashed potatoes. Use peas for buttons, carrot for the nose. Bake some cookies, decorate them, make some food-shaped cookies. Get super creative with it. Make it fun to explore these foods in a way that there are no expectations that they have to eat it, but they're getting their hands in there, they're getting dirty, they're touching things, they're feeling things, they're having new experiences, even if they're not actually eating that food. And keep it, like Debbie said, keep it no pressure, right? Make the expectation that there is no expectation. If they touch a food to feel its texture, that's a really great start. Let them know that too. Praise them for it. If all they do is listen to you talk about how the broccoli was grown, amazing. If they help you build a snowman out of mashed potatoes and peas, wonderful. They're learning and increasing their exposures to these new and non-preferred foods, and that's a really great start. And we can build off of that and we can work up to trying those things and eating those things. But this is just a really fun way. And the holidays are fun, right? You're building gingerbread houses, stuff like that. Incorporate that, right? Like it's a fun experimental time with foods and all that stuff. Just play with it, and that'll really help your kid with exploring new and novel foods.
All right, next we're going to talk about managing anxiety and stress from a mental health perspective. So first off, we want to talk about why kids might be anxious in the first place about holidays. So anxiety in general is a feeling of fear or apprehension about what's to come. So some reasons that your kiddo might be anxious about the holidays is that they're just anxious about change in general. We know the holidays bring a lot of changes in routine, in environment. You know, you have different things going on in the house, that different decorations, stuff like that, new people, all of that is a lot of change. And so they could be anxious about that. They might also have memories of previous negative experiences around the holidays or of family gatherings. Maybe they got overstimulated at a previous gathering, and so they have memories of that, and that's why they're anxious. They could also be disturbed by loud noises or lots of people. We know that the holidays often have, a lot of crowds if we're doing, holiday fun things, or if we're doing different gatherings with family, there's a lot of people there. A lot of them might not be people that they know very well. That can all be really anxiety inducing to your kiddo. So some strategies to help manage anxiety. A lot of this is going to repeat about what we've talked about with our previous disciplines. And so the first one is going to be to prepare ahead, like we've talked about before. So that includes making a visual calendar, like both Dana and Sierra talked about, with pictures of upcoming events. You can use social stories, like we talked about, to talk about events and expectations. We can use visual schedules like the one on the screen that we talked about, to kind of go over what is going to happen at those holiday gatherings or, on Christmas Day, things like that. We can also prepare ahead by practicing greetings with family members, whatever greetings work for your kiddo. It doesn't have to be, a hug and a kiss on the cheek. It could be saying hello, it could be waving, whatever is comfortable for your child. You can also practice unwrapping gifts. We know that that can be a sensory experience for your kiddo as well. That's different textures. It can be loud. You can have a lot of responses from family members. So try and practice that ahead of time and let them know what to expect. You can also practice polite responses if that's within your kiddo's skills of saying thank you, or smiling, things like that. And then lastly, we've talked about this a lot as well, but it's really important to have a designated safe or calm spot, especially if you're visiting, a relative's house or a friend's house. If you're going somewhere different that's new to them, making sure that you have a space that, maybe your child picks that out of a room that's not being used for the gathering, or just a space that they can make it their own. And then practice how your child is going to signal that they want to go there. So making sure that you understand when your kiddo needs a break from the gathering. Some more strategies to help manage anxiety are to prepare your relatives before you go. We also talked about this a lot with food, but it can also just be educating them about your child's triggers or skills that they're working on. So if we're working on, doing visual schedules and stuff like that, just talking to them ahead of time and letting them know, these are the skills that we're going to be working on. Is it okay if we have, this display to help them understand what's going to be happening? The next thing is to, make sure that your relatives are aware of your child's boundaries. So if your kiddo's not particularly comfortable with physical contact, tell them ahead of time not to force hugs or not to force kisses, and to, not expect that in return. Your kiddo might not be comfortable with giving a hug back, or, things like that. So just tell your relatives and family members beforehand of, not to expect things. Next would be to encourage your family members and relatives to give your child time to slowly warm up to them. Like we said before, a lot of these gatherings might have new faces, new people that they're unsure about, and it can be really loud, and that can just be a lot for your kiddo at first. So tell your family members, maybe not to approach them right away. Give your kiddo time to get used to the environment, used to the sounds, and become a little bit more regulated. You can also ask your family members to leave the discipline to parents. Your well-meaning grandpa or grandma might have the inkling to kind of say something to your child if they're not eating food. Tell them ahead of time to leave that to the parents, and tell them, our kiddo is a picky eater. They're still exploring new foods. Don't try and force them to eat things that they don't want to eat. And then lastly is to maybe give, if you're doing presents and stuff like that at family gatherings, give people and your family members links to specific preferred gifts. So if your kiddo is really into Spider-Man or Superman or superheroes, things like that, and have a particular gift that, they might have been asking about, something like that, you can send those links to your family members ahead of time. And lastly, just advocate for your child. You know your kiddo's boundaries better than, relatives that you might see once a year. So make sure that you're speaking up for your child about what is comfortable for them, making sure that you're letting everybody know that you're going to be taking breaks and stuff like that, just to make your kiddo comfortable. And then some tips for reducing stress. We know the holidays are a very stressful time. So some ways to kind of reduce that stress is to give kids choice when possible. So giving them a say does reduce that anxiety and that stress in a situation where things might be different than their routine. Give them a say when possible. So you could have them pick out their choice of clothes before going to the gathering. You can have them, maybe if you're hosting the gathering, help them with decorating your house and planning what foods you're going to have and what activities. Just make them a part of the planning process. And then you can let older kids know if or when they have a choice of participating or not. And then one thing that we talked about before as well is that it's really important to keep to your routines. We know that when you're doing gatherings or even the days leading up to the holiday gatherings, those routines can get a little bit out of whack. So a lot of times the kiddos might be stressed out when things aren't going the way that they normally know them to go. So that means keeping as close to possible the same meal times, the same bedtimes. We know sometimes, your kiddo might want to stay up and play with cousins or something like that on Christmas Day, but we want to make sure that we're keeping those meal times and bedtimes as close to normal as possible to keep to that routine. And then lastly, we just want to make sure that everybody is practicing self-care. So this goes for your kiddo and for parents yourselves. Remember to take time for yourself as a parent or caregiver. It's not only a stressful time for your kiddo, it's also a stressful time for you as a parent or caregiver. So if you're at gatherings, maybe try and take turns with a partner or another caretaker so that you can also have a break and enjoy the gatherings and say hello to family and friends. It's also very important to make sure that you're having downtime in between events. It can be really easy to go and have one event or multiple events in one day, but try to make sure that you have a day or two off in between events if possible to give not only your child a reboot, but also yourself. Give yourself time to, just be with the people that it's comfortable to your child, your immediate family or something like that, and just allow everybody to recharge. Next, we're going to talk about a summary from all of the disciplines of all of the tips, just in general. So for the summary, like we said, with honestly all of these disciplines, it's really important to plan ahead. That can make it go really smoothly when you're leading up to an event. So that means, packing and prepping items ahead of time, helping your kiddo choose what items are, comforting to them for gatherings, really involving them in that process. Creating a visual schedule and a calendar, all of those visual aids to help your kiddo understand the expectations about what's going to come with the events. Next, sticking to your routines, making sure you're sticking to your bedtime and your meal times leading up to events. When you're at gatherings, creating a quiet and a safe spot, helping your child pick out those safe spots and letting your family members know ahead of time that this is going to be a safe spot specifically for them. And then creating a distress signal or knowing when your child is communicating that they want to go to that safe spot. And then also bringing familiar comfort items, maybe that they pick, like a weighted blanket or a stuffed animal, things like that, to that spot. You can also decorate gradually. We know a lot of that change can cause stress and anxiety. So maybe slowly decorating your house so things aren't changing all at once, or rearranging furniture all at once. Helping family members with preferred gifts for your kiddo, bringing food if needed. So those snacks and stuff like that are safe foods for your kiddo, bringing those to family gatherings, taking breaks often when you're at your gatherings and using those quiet places, And then advocating for your child's preferences. So, whether it comes to greetings or physical contact, or even just knowing when they might be getting overstimulated with, the loud noises and stuff like that, really making sure that you're telling your family members, that you're doing this for your kiddo to respect their boundaries. And then planning downtime and taking time for you as a parent and as a child to recoup and take some time off. And then next we have some parent resources. And I know that Sierra was talking about Nookly beforehand to talk about those free social story templates. We have a link on there as well for that, as well as a couple of different articles with some more tips and tricks to help you out. Next, we're going to be going into our question and answer. So we do have this chat feature in Zoom. So please, if you have any questions that you want to ask our clinicians today, feel free to type something out in the chat. We do have a little disclaimer here for our questions and answers. Our clinicians are not going to be able to provide specific recommendation for each individual child situation without adequate assessment. So these are just kind of more generalized tips and answers to your questions. But if you have any specific questions, please reach out to us for help if you're interested in either speaking with a clinician or starting services at NSPT. We have that information here below for our phone number, as well as an email address and our website. So I'm going to go ahead and look at the chat here and see if we have any questions. It looks like we do have one from Marilee, and their question is specifically about request words when other siblings or cousins are playing with toys that maybe you brought for your kiddo specifically. She says sometimes it's difficult when the other child just starting playing with the toy and maybe your kiddo wants to play with that. So I don't know, maybe if Dana wants to talk about that, about, request words and how they can request to use that toy.
I would love to answer that. Great question. Lot of different tools. Is your child a verbal communicator, or do they use supplement their verbal communication with anything else like an AAC? So that will change things a little bit. But if we're just speaking verbally, just a simple like my turn would be great. If your child tends to speak in maybe one or two words, you want to try to keep it as simple as possible. The want toy would be great. So I guess it depends on their articulation ability, because usually we want to leverage that and make sure that your child is successful with what you're trying to prompt them to say. You want to try to choose something that is that they can be successful with and they can closely approximate as well. So that would be my go-to, would be to either say want, toy, or my turn. Or if they can expand on that, like, can I have that next, if that's where your child is at? Because it's nice to make sure that the language sounds nice and natural as well. So I don't know if Debbie, if you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'm just going to add a little bit here. Feel free to have your child say mine. It is okay for your child to defend their territory, and mine is a nice, easy word for some of our kiddos to use. The other thing too is if you brought, and that is that child's toy, it's really hard to understand, why is this person taking it from me? Why are they playing with it? I want to play with it. And so it's going to depend on the situation a little bit, but feel free to say, you know what, I brought this for my child. You can use the name, and we're going to give it back and let her use it right now. You have all these other toys you can play with. It's okay to help advocate for your child in that specific, if it's their toy, just to avoid any meltdowns.
Yeah, and use those expectations too. Okay, you can borrow it, but we're going to set a timer for that if your child is willing to share. So leverage that as well.
And then maybe, I know Dana, you expanded on this a little bit, but if you could expand a little bit on what to do if it's maybe not their toy. And like you said, I guess using those terms like maybe giving them a turn or something like that. But if you have anything else to expand expand on if it's not specifically your kiddo's toy?
Use the word borrow. Yeah, that would be another thing. Another nice strategy I'd like to use for turn taking is kind of a trade. So maybe if your child doesn't have that skill yet, maybe the other child has something that your child's interested in. So then you can kind of trade, set a timer. Okay, trade. So you can kind of gauge how long, if you're going to engage in the sharing behavior, you can modify that and clearly outline the expectation with a timer. But yeah, can I have a turn, or can I see that? Can I borrow it? Can I play with that? Or some nice phrases to use. And then to break it down, you could just simplify it to like my turn or want turn. Those types of phrases.
Right. And then we have another question about sensory accommodations. And basically, what suggestions do you have of maybe specific headphones or something like that to use to calm your kiddos' behaviors when you're in a loud room or something like that? I don't know if you have any suggestions of specific types of headphones or maybe some other sensory accommodations as well.
Yeah, so it's definitely going to depend on the kind of sensory input that your child is looking for. I can drop some links into the chat of some ideas. Um, Something to just be aware of too is how much pressure is your kid looking for too? Some kids are only looking for noise to end up getting quieted, and some kids actually kind of like some head squeezes with it. Like that helps regulate them as well. So of course the headphones that have the band that go over the ears, does your kid like having their ears get a little squished? Um, Pay attention to kind of like wherever you're buying them from Amazon or anything like that. Like you can always return them, but try those out and see how those are. If your kid doesn't like those squeezes, maybe we pick a different kind. There are ones that are just they kind of look like fabric headbands, like ones that you would wear in the winter time that have like some speakers in them so you can play some music, but it doesn't really like squeeze the head too much. That's a good option. There's also things like earplugs. I am blanking on the name right now. I'll drop it in there too, but there are ones that are little headphones or little earbud ones that you can put in that can help dampen the noise, but don't necessarily make the noise completely go away. So those are a bunch of different options. It just depends on what kind of sensory input your child is looking for. So maybe getting a couple options, trying those out, and just making sure that you can return those options if you don't like them. And that way you can pick one that really specifically benefits your child. But I will drop some links in there of options that you can go to.
Awesome, perfect. And I think that is all of our questions so far, but I'll give it about another minute. But we will be sending a copy of the slides as well as the recording of the presentation afterwards as well. We'll also have it uploaded on our YouTube page that you can follow it along on there. And we'll be posting it on our social media accounts as well. I'll just give it another minute to see if anyone else has any questions for our presenters, or maybe if our presenters have anything else they want to expand on, any topics that you might think is a frequently asked questions, anything like that. Otherwise, I think we'll just give you some time back, but we'll just wait here another minute for any other questions. All right, so I think that's it for today. So Sierra did put some links in the chat if you want to check them out for different types of sensory headphones for kiddos and earplugs as well. But thank you all so much for attending our webinar today. Like I said, we'll be sending out the slides as well as a recording of the presentation to your email, as well as having it on our social media pages and our YouTube. But thank you again. We appreciate it. And once again, if you are interested in speaking with a clinician specifically or starting services at North Shore Pediatric Therapy, we have our contact information there on the screen. But yeah, thank you everybody so much. And we hope you have a good rest of your day and enjoy your very happy holidays.